Namaste. Happy evening to all of you. So, today we begin our session on a different note altogether. And I'm not sure whether you got a time to read further the new chapter. So, what we're going to do is we start with two activities first, and then we do a little bit of a reading today, little differently, keeping the practice in the mind. So let us begin. Let me share the screen just a second. Some little bit of an adjustment needs to be done so that we can begin. Yes. So welcome. You must be seeing one beautiful painting by Om Prakash Ji titled Vertical Light from New Delhi 1984. And just look at the painting and become aware of what sort of thoughts, emotions are emerging. Become aware of your thoughts, your emotions. And along with that, try to be aware of any physical sensations and whatever came out. You can, right now or later on, can write it in your journal. Every painting, every word has a certain impression, and through that, an artist wants to tell us something. And it is very important that we approach to that art, that painting, those words, those sculptures, whatever, in whichever form that art is, we approach them with a very blank mind that I don't know. I'm not looking for a particular thing. I want to know what artist wants to tell me. I want to feel what the artist felt at that time, whether it's a poet or a sculptor or a scientist or an engineer. Can I feel that thing? Can I think and get into that same process of thought to reach to that same level of light? Not to describe the picture from my point of view, but what I felt, what artist wants to tell me. Not to use my brain to interpret it, but to truly connect and feel. This is one of the exercise you can try with the different paintings and see what are the outcomes and results. Try with different poems which you are aware about, or the songs, or the dance, whichever the form. this leads us to one more activity. But before we do that activity, I think we will read today first, and then we'll get into that activity so that there is a subtle hint, a practice as a student as well as a teacher, we need to do it. And there's recently one small video of Harvard graduation, some graduation ceremony going on. That Harvard, do you listen? Where South Asian origin girl is on her graduation of class 2024, speaks about power of I don't know, power of not knowing, and then aspiring for the light. So let us read further. Today's chapter, everywhere, as you are aware, we are taking up one chapter. We are reading it at our own pace. And here we read a little bit together, some conversations and discussion which happens. Namaste, Sarita ji. I hope you're able to see the screen. I just shared one exercise before, and I think we can continue a little bit of a reading first today to understand the context. And after a reading, we'll do one more exercise, which is there in my mind. So I'm reading the first page, then you can continue for the second page, if it is possible. Introduction. The chapter title is Human Disciple. There are moments when all that we have learned, believed, and practiced seems to lead us to perplexity and confusion. And we find ourselves helpless and at a standstill. The norms and standards of conduct we have followed so far come into sharp conflict, and we no longer know what to do or how to act, even when we are aware that some action is necessary. These are moments of crisis, and in our state of helplessness, we are apt to give up the battle of life. Fortunate are they who, at such a moment, have a questioning and seeking mind and a teacher nearby to whom they can turn for advice, knowledge, and inspiration. At such moments, we realize that all life is unending education, and that to receive it, we must develop the right attitude. A good pupil is a constant learner. A good pupil is a constant learner. One striking example of the acceptance of discipleship in the midst of a terrible crisis is the story of Arjun at Kurukshetra that we find in the Mahabharata. This momentous episode provides the occasion for the teaching of the Gita, and its importance derives from the fact that Arjun can be looked upon as a representative man. The crisis he faces could come upon anyone, for each human being has in him something of the same temperament, turn of thought, and balance of strength and weakness as Arjun. Like Arjun, we are all subject to the rule of the three modes of the nature force, or gunas, to use the language of the Gita. Sarita ji, would you continue? Next part. You are on mute. You can unmute and
Apologies, apologies. I was trying to enter this meeting through Google. That's why I got late. I'm really sorry.
it's okay, Kanika. Um, yeah, so we'll follow the order and then one page each of us can read. Sarita, would you able to read or else Kanika can go? You are on mute if you are speaking anything. Okay, I think we can go ahead. Kanika, you can read the next page.
Sure.
I hope screen is visible.
Yes, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas from there.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are the three chains which bind us. And like Arjun, most of our being is Rajasic and pragmatic, with a degree of purer Sattva in respect to our attitude towards moral law, society, and the claims of others upon us. To study Arjun is to study ourselves. We have included here a most illuminating study of Arjun found in Sri Aurobindo's essays on the Gita under the apt title The Human Disciple. The human disciple Arjun was fortunate, we might say, to have with him at a critical moment of his life the divine teacher Krishna. And we might wonder if very many of us would be so fortunate at the critical moments of life. Yet, whether or not we accept the concept of divine omnipresence, we will find if we watch ourselves and our surroundings with the eyes of an earnest seeker that there are sermons even in stones. In any case, the Gita assures us that Krishna, the divine teacher, is always near to guide and teach, and that his help is unfailing. The figure of Krishna is the symbol of the divine's dealing with humanity. Arjun, as we know him in the Mahabharata, is the Rajasic man who governs his Rajasic actions by a high sattvic ideal. At the opening of the episode in the Gita, we find him advancing to the field of a gigantic struggle to Kurukshetra with the full acceptance of the joy of battle as to a holiday of fight. He has confidence in the righteousness of his cause, believing that the sons of Dhritarashtra are unjust and wicked, and that they should be destroyed in order to establish a reign of justice and good. He advances in his rapid chariot,
Just a second. Yeah.
driven by Krishna, tearing the hearts of his enemies with the victorious clamor of his war conch. He asks Krishna to set his chariot between the armies so that he can look upon the kings who had come there to champion the cause of unrighteousness and disregarding law, justice, and truth to establish the rule of selfish and arrogant egoism. But as he looks at them and as he sees on the other side his teachers, guardians, and brethren, he is inwardly defeated by the uprush of the tamasic quality. He recoils in horror, dismay, and dejection, his mind bewildered and his reason at war with itself. His being collapses towards the principle of ignorance and inertia. I will not fight, he declares, casting down his Gandiva, the divine bow, an inexhaustible quiver, he cries out, "It is for my welfare that the sons of Dhritarashtra, armed, should slay me, unarmed and unresisting." He argues that the path of renunciation is preferable to the terrible action of war. Krishna, the divine teacher, knows that Arjun is experiencing the typical tamasic recoil from action of the sattvic rajasic man. He discourages this recoil and enjoins Arjun to go on with the fierce and terrible action that confronts him. And he points the disciple towards an inner renunciation, which will be the real solution to his crisis and the way towards the soul's calm, self possessed action in the world. Not a physical asceticism, not escapism, but an inner ascesis is the teaching of the Gita. What Krishna impresses upon Arjun is the necessity of the battle of life. And in Arjun's case, at that point in time, his battle of life is the war of Kurukshetra. To fully grasp this, we must understand that ancient.
We stop there a little bit.
Sure.
I just read this part, understand a little bit about these three gunas. The sattva connotes balance, equilibrium, and a tendency towards knowledge and light. Rajas connotes impulse, desire, ambition, drive, dynamism, and a tendency towards action and battle. Tamas connotes inertia, sloth, idleness, ignorance, and a tendency towards mechanical repetition and inaction. So before summary happens, just to take these three words and the combination of them, like a Rajasic Sattvic or action of the Sattvic Rajasic man and recoiling to the Tamas. Just want to share a little bit on that part of it. What I feel as I read this is we like to copy, we like to imitate, we like to repeat as what we were doing all that time. And we, even being a Sattvic Rajasic man, who we are generally, we enjoy that tamasic nature of ours. If somebody changes our routine or for some reason our routine has been disturbed, that is a part of a tamas, the routine, because it's a same thing again and again every day. You have a start of a thing. So we get disturbed, our rajas gets activated. Or if we are more in a sattvic, maybe we remain calm and we navigate it, but still this three combination of the nature forces acts and reacts and moves us most of the time. So not to see tamas as something totally bad, not to see sattvic as something totally bright and a brilliant. There is all the combination of it, and different times we play differently. Okay. Sarita, will you be able to read now or?
Yes, sir.
Okay. To fully grasp.
Okay. To fully grasp this, we must understand that ancient Indian civilization aimed to minimize the incidence and disaster of war. To achieve this aim, it limited military oblation to the small classes of Kshatriya, The rest of the community was guarded from slaughter and outrage. War was considered War was considered an inevitable part of a certain stage of human evolution when people are not sufficiently trained morally and spiritually to develop a social life based on mutual goodwill. At the same time, ancient Indian civilization maintained that harmony is greater than war and love more the manifest divine than death. There was a constant stress on transcending the need for clash and warfare. Krishna himself undertook the mission of peace to Duryodhana. It was only when Duryodhana rejected Krishna's proposal that war became inevitable. In this world of ignorance, when our ascent is through a forest of wild forces, we are required to accept the battlefield of Kurukshetra. In due course, however, we must move toward the replacement of physical force by soul force, of war by peace, of strife by union, of during by love, of egoism. Would we realize ancient Indian civilization imposed condition on the conduct of war so as to assure the minimum harm to the general life of the race, high ethical ideals, and every possible rule of humanity and um, cowardly were exacted from the warrior. War of this kind and under these conditions is that the Gita advises war is considered an inevitable part of life at a certain एक सेकंड एक सेकंड सर मिस हो गया थोड़ा सा
या मैंने थोड़ा उसको ऊपर किया
जी जी पॉज
आप यहाँ से पढ़ सकते हैं जहाँ पे मैंने हाईलाइट किया
war of this kind and under these condition is war the Gita advises war is considered an inevitable part of life at a certain stage of human evolution, but even then is so restricted and regulated as to serve like other activities mankind's ethical and spiritual development. For this is regarded as the whole real object of life. Perhaps today we are at a stage in evolution where no degree of violence seems justified. Yet it cannot be said that we have transcended the stage where life itself is a battlefield. The kingdom of God on earth is yet to be established, and until then, the call to battle is inevitable. And even when truth prevails, the call to action shall still remain. It is fundamentally this call that the divine teacher gives to the human discipline.
Thank you, Sarita, for reading part of it. There are many interesting aspects into this. Just reading a last one line. So, just to grasp and understand the whole Indian civilization concept around the war, the rules like after the dawn you cannot fight. Sorry, after the dawn only you can fight, and after the dusk you cannot fight. Right? If enemy is without the weapon, you don't strike on it. So such a high standard of the warfare, in fact, had been practiced, which is to just minimize, restrict and regulate. So everything was restricted and regulated to certain extent. And over a period, the more decline happened after the war. Particularly, so this restriction and regulation, instead of serving the major purpose for the mankind for ethical and spiritual development, it found a lot of counterproductive rather than what the main purpose was about. So before we read the passage, actually the whole chapter of which contains 3-4 pages, I just want to remind the reader and all the listeners right now that the passage is written almost 110 years ago. Number one. Number two, it is written in the old style of English. Number three, the picture which we saw before at the starting of the session, uh, I am showing it again. The picture, this is a picture called the vertical light. So the author Sri Aurobindo, as he received from the divine the light that has been typed and written and edited. So it is not something from coming more from the human mind, and that has, you can see in terms of a long writing, big passages which requires a silent mind as well as a larger comprehension to widen the mind to understand all the different points put together in the single sentence itself sometimes, or paragraph after the paragraph. So keeping this in mind, uh, I just want everyone, before we read some part of it, to just become aware of the stillness present. There is a stillness within you and around you. You can do it by just being aware of your heartbeat, or by being aware of your breathing, natural breath, or by being aware of the space between you and the wall and the vastness which it is there. It looks so near, but everything is so far. Or you can do it through mantra also, chanting it few times in your head. I will not read the whole part of it. There is a way to read this whole, which you can study later also. And there are a lot of learnings from the Mahabharata itself, the whole story itself. What we'll do is, as it's said, it is an essay. So every essay begins with a kind of an introductory para. An essay concludes with a summarization, the end. So we just read this two paragraph. The middle part we will miss. And after each paragraph, we'll do a small practice. If we need be, we might be reading it twice or thrice because it's something different to just see. So I read, let's read this in this way. So we read this one paragraph 3 times. And so each of one will read it. And then we'll do one activity. And let's see if we have a time, we can read the last paragraph too. So I'm beginning. Arjun is the fighter in the chariot with the divine Krishna as his charioteer. In the Veda also, we have this image of the human soul and the divine riding in one chariot through a great battle to the goal of a high aspiring effort. But there, it is a pure figure and symbol. The divine is there, Indra, the master of the world of light and immortality. The power of divine knowledge which descends to the aid of the human seeker, battling with the sons of falsehood darkness, limitation, mortality. The battle is with spiritual enemies who bar the way to the higher world of our being. And the goal is that plane of vast being, resplendent with the light of the supreme truth and uplifted to the conscious immortality of the perfect soul of which Indra is the master. The human soul is Kutsu, he who constantly seeks the seer knowledge, as his name implies, and he is the son of Arjun or Arjuni, the white one, child of Svitra, the white mother. He is, that is to say, the sattvic or purified and light filled soul, which is open to the unbroken glories of the divine knowledge. And when the chariot reaches the end of its journey, the own home of Indra, the human Kutsu has grown into such an exact likeness of his divine companion that he can only be distinguished by CiC, the wife of Indra, because she is truth conscious. The parable is evidently of the inner life of man. It is a figure of the human growing into the likeness of the eternal divine by the increasing illumination of knowledge. But the Gita starts from action, and Arjun is the man of action and not of knowledge, the fighter, and never the seer or the thinker. I think we should read a little bit more before we reread it, maybe. From the beginning of the Gita, this characteristic temperament of the disciple is clearly indicated and it is maintained throughout. What is this characteristic temperament of the disciple? That it is an action oriented, a fighter kind of a personality, and not the seer or a thinker. It becomes first evident in the manner in which he is awakened to the sense of what he is doing, the great slaughter of which he is to be the chief instrument, in the thoughts which immediately rise in him, in the standpoint and the psychological motives which make him recoil from the whole terrible catastrophe. They are not the thoughts, the standpoint, the motives of a philosophical or even of a deeply reflective mind or a spiritual temperament confronted with the same or similar problem. They are those, as we might say, of the practical or the pragmatic man, the emotional, sensational, moral, and intelligent human being, not habituated to profound and original reflection or any sounding of the depths, accustomed rather to high but fixed standards of thought and action, and a confident treading through all vicissitudes and difficulties, who now finds all his standards failing him. All the basis of his confidence in himself and his life shone away from under him at a single stroke. That is the nature of the crisis which he undergoes. So, anyone like to reread it? Or feel like continuing little further and then do the exercise? Exercise would take 5 to 10 minutes minimum. You can share. You are on mute if you are speaking, Sarita or Kanika.
Would you like me to read? Should I read, or am I supposed to like
I
ask a
think
question?
I think read one more and then we'll do the exercise. One
Okay,
more
okay.
paragraph.
So should I read from here?
Yeah.
Okay. Arjun is, in the language of the Gita, a man subject to the action of the three gunas or modes of nature force and habituated to move unquestioningly in that field, like the generality of men. He justifies his name only in being so far pure and sattvic as to be governed by high and clear principles and impulses, and habitually control his lower nature by the noblest law which he knows. He is not of a violent, asuric disposition, not the slave of his passions, but has been trained to a high calm and self control, to an unswerving performance of his duties and firm obedience to the high principles of the time and society in which he has lived, and the religion and ethics to which he has been brought up. He is egoistic like other men, but with the purer or sattvic egoism which regards the moral law and society and the claims of others, and not only or predominantly his own interests, desires, and passions. He has lived and guided himself by the Shastra, the moral and social code, the thought which preoccupies him. The standard which he obeys is the dharma, that collective Indian conception of the religious, social, and moral rule of conduct, and especially the rule of the station and function to which he belongs. He, the Kshatriya, the high minded, self governed, chivalrous prince and warrior, and leader of Aryan men. Following always this rule, conscious of virtue and right dealing, he has traveled so far and finds suddenly that it has led him to become the protagonist of a terrific and unparalleled slaughter, a monstrous civil war involving all the cultured Aryan nations, which must lead to the complete destruction of the flower of their manhood and threatens their ordered civilization with chaos and collapse.
Thank you.
Should I read, please?
I give a chance to Sarita if
Oh,
she's
okay,
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 else
okay.
you can read. Sarita, can you read the last paragraph? You are on mute, Sarita. I hope you are able to hear me. Okay. Kanika, you can read last paragraph.
To such a disciple, the teacher of the Gita gives his divine teaching. He seizes him at a moment of his psychological development by egoistic action, when all the mental, moral, emotional values of the ordinary egoistic and social life of man have collapsed in a sudden bankruptcy, and he has to lift him out of this lower life into a higher consciousness, out of ignorant attachment to action, into that which transcends yet originates and orders action out of ego into self, out of life in mind, vitality and body into that higher nature beyond mind, which is the status of the divine. He has at the same time to give him that for which he asks and for which he is inspired to seek by the guidance within him, a new law of life and action, high above the insufficient rule of the ordinary human existence, with its endless conflicts and oppositions, perplexities, and illusory certainties, a higher law by which the soul shall be free from this bondage of works and yet powerful to act and conquer in the vast liberty of its divine being. For the action must be performed, the world must fulfill its cycles, and the soul of the human being must not turn back in ignorance from the work it is here to do. The whole course of the teaching of the Gita is determined and directed, even in its wildest wheelings, towards the fulfillment of these three objects.
Thank you. We'll, there are many things one can continue reading. Krishna, the teacher, Drona, many, it's like plethora of things. And this whole Mahabharata part of it. We'll do one exercise which reminds me of the Gita. It's very simple. I would be sharing three phrases we might have done before also. And just what emerges when I share those three phrases, just become aware of it, and then you can write, draw. We have done it on our very first day. We are doing it again as a reminder. And that when Arjuna came and he asked the question, he was full of those uh, questions and arguments filled with facts, filled with all the high standards written in Shastra, like I know attitude. And as the conversation continues, the attitude changes. And then he becomes a disciple and asks that, now you teach me. Even in middle, he has a doubt and he asks, how is it possible at the beginning of the fourth chapter that the same knowledge you had given to the sun and the Vivaswan and all that, right now you are physically here. So all these doubts keeps on coming to us also, and every day at every moment we need to go with this attitude of I don't know, nothingness. So just requesting you to close your eyes and become aware of your natural breath. Become more aware of, like following your breath, following your breath inside as deep as it goes, as far as it goes inside your body, as far as you can follow with your awareness and attention. And while exhaling, being aware how far it goes, where it goes, how far you are able to follow it. As you become aware, you would find a gap, a stillness between inhale and exhale. Let it emerge what needs to be emerged from that still space, from that blank space of not knowing. Neither it is inhale, neither it is exhale, neither it is a forceful. And as you become more and more aware of it, this is exactly that stage from where we should approach like our container is empty. Then there is a chance for a knowledge to emerge, for a new thoughts to come in, enter inside. Else, our knowledge is of a tamasic kind, tamasic nature. Highest of the knowledge can also turn tamasic in nature or can be used differently by the nature force. Whenever you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes. If you like to write it down, do something, please do so. Like a blank canvas with the fresh feelings and a new perspective. Let it emerge slowly for you. And whatever you feel like writing, maybe sharing something over a chat or by unmuting, everything is welcome. We'll wait here for next 4 to 5 minutes for the process to complete by itself. Anyone like to share, put it on a chat or just write down, can do that. Thank you. I am an eternal learner. I realize today that even the ones who hurt me, abuse me, or traumatize me as my gurus, I still remain an eternal learner. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Kanika. I think one of the learning right now, I would take it further and forward from today's reading is from the first paragraph, where there is a part of a learning companion. And this idea that in the company with whom you live, you also become like that. So, how more and more one can live in the company of a higher thoughts, higher ideals, and more noble people, and naturally you also move towards it. But yet, you are not that truth fully. You are just part. That's a partial work. Then there is a shift of a being that the being itself becomes that. So that's something interesting learning which is emerging right now for me. Thank you. And Sarita, are you there? You able to hear or would be able to share with us anything? In that area has a network issue today, and sometimes it is difficult. So thank you so much. We'll meet on next Monday. Next Monday is a Raksha Bandhan day, but I think we will meet and we continue the reading part of it. We'll take up a next chapter, uh, and the seeker and the teacher, which is on Gautam Buddha. So you can complete the reading of this, read the other part of the next chapter, and we'll continue the process. Thank you. Take care. Namaste.
Thank you so much. Namaste.